ever get that feeling, like something's off with the information you're being fed? Or, that creepy sense of being watched, even when you're alone?
Oh, yeah. It's a pretty common anxiety these days, right?
It is. But it's kind of wild to think that this whole idea, this vision of a society totally controlled goes way back, all the way to a book that still freaks people out, 1984.
Exactly. And that's what we're diving deep into today, this seriously powerful and kind of messed up novel.
Yeah, we want to go beyond just the plot and even where the ideas came from. We really want to unpack those core themes, what Orwell was getting at.
Right, and why 1984 still hits so hard
Yeah,
all these years later.
exactly. And to do that, we've got a ton of interesting stuff to go through. Passages from the book itself, how it went from idea to publication, the real-world events that fueled Orwell's imagination.
Plus other books that influenced him.
Oh, yeah, and the huge impact it's had, even now.
Totally.
Our goal, to give you a clear picture of 1984 and why it matters without drowning you in details. Okay, so first things first, what kicked this whole thing off for Orwell?
Well, to really grasp 1984, you got to understand Orwell. Our sources highlight that he was, and I quote, a convinced believer in democratic socialism and a member of the anti-Stalinist left. Can't stress that enough. This wasn't him trashing all socialist ideas.
Yeah.
This was a very specific warning about what? The horrors of totalitarianism,
Right.
the constant surveillance that goes with it, and crushing individual thought.
So not just some made-up dystopia then, he was reacting to real dangers.
Exactly. The biggest influences, the horrors he saw happening, the Soviet Union under Stalin, the censorship and propaganda, Nazi Germany doing similar stuff.
Makes sense.
But he was going deeper than that. He was wrestling with a really fundamental question about truth itself,
Oh, interesting.
the role of facts in society, and how easily they can be twisted.
And weaponized, basically.
Exactly.
It seems like these worries started early for him.
Yeah. While he said the idea came to him in 43, there are hints it might have been even earlier.
Oh, really?
Notes from that time touch on these themes. The Tehran Conference in 43, where they talked about dividing the world into zones of influence, that seems to have stuck with him, particularly in 44.
I guess he saw the danger in that, right? Those zones turning into mini totalitarian states.
Exactly. It makes you wonder, seeing similar power plays today, if Orwell's fears were on point.
Chilling to think about. And his experiences after the war, those played a part too, right?
Huge part. Traveling through Austria in May of 45, it was like a preview of the Soviet and Allied zones being set up. He saw those power dynamics firsthand.
And that just amplified those worries.
Absolutely.
Okay, then there's the influence of other dystopian novels. We, by Yevgeny Zamyatin, seem to really open his eyes.
It did. It's fascinating, right? Orwell came across We in January 44, thanks to this literary scholar.
Okay.
And he instantly saw how powerful this genre could be. To explore those themes, he even said he'd started brainstorming his own version.
Wow, so he was already hooked on this whole idea of societies under total control. He even compared it to another famous one, Brave New World.
He did, in 46, specifically calling out the similarities he saw with We. It's like he was sizing up the dystopian landscape, seeing where his own vision would fit in.
And after Animal Farm became such a success, it feels like he had the momentum to tackle something bigger, darker.
Right. Animal Farm's success gave him the platform, the confidence maybe, to write something like 1984.
It's fascinating how an artist's early work can lead to their most challenging stuff.
Yeah, it's like the path was paved.
So with all these ideas swirling, how did writing 1984 actually go? Doesn't sound like it was easy.
You're telling me. It was a long, tough process, made worse by his health going downhill.
Right.
He first mentioned the book in June 44, said he'd done about 12 pages, thought it might come out in 47.
Okay.
But he knew journalism would slow him down.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Over a year later, he'd only done about 50 pages.
Wow, so it sounds like the pressure of journalism and city life were getting to him.
Big time.
Yeah.
He grew to hate London and was overwriting for newspapers. Plus, his health was getting worse. Bronchiectasis, lung injury, and a brutal winter didn't help.
And that's when he went looking for a quieter place to write, right?
Yep. Jura. That's where he landed. A remote farmhouse in Scotland.
Sounds intense.
It was. No electricity, no hot water. Really basic. He worked on the book there on and off.
Okay.
First day was until October 46. But he admitted he barely got anything done.
Huh.
Months went by without any progress.
Wow. And even after going back to Jura, it was still tough going.
It was. Winter in London, then back to Jura in May 47.
Okay.
He told his publisher he was about a third done, but it was slow, painful going. Called the draft a fearful mess.
Oof.
Sent it off to London to be typed up.
And this whole time, his health was still getting worse,
Very
right?
seriously worse. By September, he was bedridden. Lung inflammation, weight loss, night sweats.
It's awful.
But he refused to see a doctor. Kept writing. Finished the first draft in bed on November 7th.
Jeez.
Only then did he get medical help. And, well, they found chronic tuberculosis.
So dedicated, even facing all that.
It's incredible, right? Discharged in the summer of '48, back to Jura, and by November he had a second draft done.
Wow.
But it was still a jumbled mess. The publisher said Orwell needed to be there to explain it.
I can see that.
The original typist wasn't available, so Orwell, weak as he was, decided to redraft the whole thing himself.
No way.
Fever, coughing fits, the whole 9 yards.
Wow.
Final manuscript submitted December 4th, '48. He left Jura for good in January '49, went to a sanatorium.
What a story. Even the title, 1984, it's so iconic, instantly recognizable. But he considered other titles, right?
He did. The Last Man in Europe was a strong contender.
Oh, I can see that.
But it was the publisher, Warburg, who pushed for 1984.
Yeah.
Thought it would sell better, be more impactful. Orwell agreed.
Smart move, honestly. There's also that theory that it's just the year he finished it, 1948, reversed. Any truth to that?
It's a popular theory,
Yeah.
for sure. But Dorian Lynskey, he's written a ton about 1984. He's not buying it.
Really?
He says it was actually the American publisher who first brought up that whole reversal thing. Christopher Hitchens mentioned it too, saying it made the title more immediate, more urgent.
Yeah.
But Lynskey thinks it's too simple, too neat for such a complex book.
Right. So what does he think?
He suggests some other connections, like Orwell's wife had written a poem with 1984 in the title, and there's that Chesterton novel, The Napoleon of Notting Hill.
Oh, right. That starts in 1984.
And Jack London's The Iron Heel also uses that year.
Yeah.
But Lynskey thinks those are just coincidences.
Fair enough.
What's more convincing, he says, is looking at Orwell's drafts. He started with 1980, then 1982, and finally settled on 1984.
Interesting. So not a last-minute change. Crazy how even the title has caused so much debate.
Speaking of debate, what about the book's release? Orwell wasn't exactly thrilled about it, was he?
Not really. Just before it came out, he called it a beastly book.
Oh, wow.
Said it could have been better if he hadn't been so sick.
Yeah?
But apparently that was kind of typical for him, putting his own work down before it went public.
Huh. Interesting.
But the publishers, Secker and Warburg, they were super excited about it and got it out there pretty quick.
And Orwell was really protective of the book's vision, even if it meant losing money.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
He refused to let them do this dumbed-down synopsis, making it sound like just a thriller with a love story.
Right.
And get this. The American Book of the Month Club wanted to cut out the Newspeak appendix and the whole Goldstein's book chapter.
Whoa, that's a huge chunk.
Orwell said no way. Warburg figured that cost him like 40,000 pounds in sales.
That's a lot, even now.
But Orwell was firm. He wouldn't compromise his work.
Respect. Okay, so when did 1984 finally hit the shelves? What was the reaction? It came out in the UK on June 8th, '49. First printing was over 25,000 copies.
Okay.
Orwell thought he'd make about 500 pounds from it.
Modest expectations.
It blew up even bigger in the U.S., though. Released June 13th by Harcourt Brace. The initial 20,000 copies, gone, like, instantly.
Wow.
More printings followed. By 1970, over 8 million copies sold in the U.S. By 1984, it was topping bestseller lists.
It's amazing how that year became synonymous with the book.
Right.
And the manuscript itself, it's got its own story, doesn't it?
Oh, it does. In '52, Orwell's widow sold it at a charity auction for £50. It's the only complete manuscript of his that survived.
Wow.
It's at Brown University now.
Cool. I also heard there are different versions of the text floating around.
Yeah, because of publishing differences between the UK and US, there are little changes.
Oh, right.
Spelling, punctuation, a few words here and there.
Or
Orwell didn't like big changes, so these flew under the radar.
yeah, makes sense.
But bigger revisions have popped up over time. In '84, Peter Davison put out this facsimile edition of the manuscript, with every page as Orwell wrote it.
Cool.
And in '97, he did the definitive text, part of Orwell's complete works,
Gotcha.
fixing errors and changes that weren't Orwell's. And in 2021, there was 1984, the Jura edition.
So a lot of textual variations.
Yeah, which just shows how important and intensely studied this book still is.
Absolutely. Okay, enough about the background. Let's get into the story itself. For anyone who hasn't read it, though it feels like everyone knows the basic idea, what's the core premise of 1984?
It all starts on April 4, 1984. But even Winston, our main guy, isn't sure if that's the real year.
Right, because of all the rewriting of history.
Exactly. The world's been wrecked by war, revolutions, leaving just 3 massive totalitarian superstates: Oceania, Eurasia, and Eastasia.
And what used to be Britain is now Airstrip 1, part of Oceania.
Right, ruled by the party with their ideology, INGSOC, short for English socialism.
And led by the mysterious Big Brother, of course.
Yep, with his whole personality cult going strong, they maintain control through total surveillance, rewriting history, and nonstop propaganda.
All designed to squash any individuality.
Absolutely.
And Winston, he's stuck in this system, and he hates it.
He does. He works at the Ministry of Truth, rewriting history to match whatever the party says.
So, basically erasing the truth.
Basically.
But he's secretly rebelling.
He is. He knows his own thoughts make him a thought criminal, which in that world is a death sentence.
Literally erased from existence.
Exactly.
And he starts pushing back in his own way, which in that context is incredibly brave.
It is. He buys a diary, which is forbidden.
Oh, right, from Mr. Charrington, the antique shop guy.
Yeah, in the Pearl District, where things are a little looser. In the diary, he starts writing down his real thoughts, criticizing the party, hating on Big Brother.
Wow, that's risky.
Super risky.
Yeah.
When he goes into the Pearl areas, he's disappointed to see they don't care about politics at all.
Like they're oblivious to the party's control.
Totally. Back at the ministry, he notices Julia.
The woman who works on the fiction writing machines.
That's her. Winston thinks she's a party spy.
Interesting.
Doesn't trust her at all. He's also got this hope that O'Brien, his boss, a bigwig in the inner party, might be part of the resistance.
The Brotherhood, right. Led by Goldstein, Big Brother's enemy.
Exactly.
And then Winston and Julia start this secret affair. It's like a spark of humanity in this dehumanizing world.
It is. One day, Julia slips him a love note.
Bold move.
It kicks off their super dangerous relationship. Julia hates the party too, but in a different way.
Yeah.
She's more about personal freedom, enjoying herself, surviving.
Not so much about overthrowing the whole system.
Right. They meet in the countryside, away from the telescreens. Then they find this room above Mr. Charrington's shop.
And Winston starts thinking about his past, right?
He does. How his parents and sister vanished during the wars, which leaves him with a lot of guilt.
And his ex-wife, Catherine, a total party fanatic.
Yeah, their relationship was loveless, empty.
And then there's O'Brien. He seems intellectual, maybe even sympathetic to Winston's cause. But that turns out to be a lie, doesn't it?
A huge lie. Weeks into the affair, O'Brien invites Winston to his place. Acts all secretive, like he's part of the Brotherhood. Gives Winston a copy of Goldstein's book.
The Theory and Practice of Oligarchical Collectivism.
Yeah, a forbidden text. Then, during Hate Week, the party does a complete 180.
Oh, right. They suddenly switch enemies from Eurasia to Eastasia.
Yep, total chaos. And Winston has to rewrite all the records to match the new reality.
Crazy. But Winston and Julia managed to read some of Goldstein's book, right?
They do. The book explains how the party stays in power, the real meaning of their slogans, why they keep wars going.
And it suggests that the proles, the regular people, could actually overthrow the party if they realized their power.
Exactly. But there's this one crucial detail.
What's that?
Winston never gets to read the last chapter.
The one that explains why the party wants power in the first place.
Right.
Man, that's frustrating.
It is. And then, just when they think they're safe, in that room above the shop,
They get caught.
busted.
And it turns out Mr. Charrington was thought police all along.
That's right. A total betrayal. They're separated, taken to the Ministry of Love.
The place where they break you.
It's where O'Brien's true colors come out. He's not Brotherhood, he's thought police.
What?
It was all a setup.
How messed up.
Winston goes through months of torture, starvation, brainwashing. O'Brien's the one in charge.
Awful.
He tells Winston the Brotherhood might not even be real, and that Goldstein's book was written by the party.
What?
And then he drops this bombshell. The party wants power for power's sake, not for some greater good, just pure power.
Oh, it's chill.
And then comes Room 101.
Where they use your worst fear against you.
Exactly. For Winston, it's rats. They strap this cage full of rats to his face, and he breaks.
Betrays Julia, says he loves Big Brother.
It's heartbreaking.
And the ending, there's no happy ending, is there?
Nope. Winston gets released, but he's a shell of his former self. Runs into Julia, but they Both admit they betrayed each other.
Their love is gone.
He spends his days in this cafe listening to propaganda about Oceania winning.
And in the end, he accepts Big Brother.
Totally buys into it. All traces of rebellion are gone.
Man, that's bleak.
It is.
Okay, let's shift gears. Let's talk about the themes and influences in 1984. This wasn't just some random dystopia, was it?
Not at all. It's deeply connected to what was going on in Orwell's time.
Makes sense.
He said in a letter that he wanted to show what would happen if Stalinism took over in English-speaking countries.
That was his big warning.
Exactly.
And you can see connections to his earlier work, too, right?
Yeah, there are echoes. Like in A Clergyman's Daughter. It's a different story. But there's that same theme of being watched, oppressed, and eventually giving in.
Interesting.
That fear of society crushing the individual. It seems to have been a recurring thing for him.
Yeah, I can see that. And that 2 + 2 = 5 slogan. That's so chilling. It's not just made up, is it?
Nope. It comes from a real Soviet slogan.
Wow.
During their 5-year plan, they pushed workers to do 5 years of work in 4.
Makes sense, I guess.
This 2 + 2 = 5 thing was plastered all over Moscow. Shows how they twisted even basic math for propaganda.
It's like they wanted to control reality itself.
Exactly.
And those shifting alliances between Oceania and Eurasia, that feels like a real-world thing, too.
Oh, absolutely. Just like how the Soviet Union flipped between hating and befriending Nazi Germany.
Right, the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact.
Exactly. Orwell saw that happen firsthand.
And the characters, Goldstein and Big Brother, they're pretty obvious stand-ins for real people, right?
They are. Goldstein, with his goatee, he's basically Trotsky.
Right, the exiled Soviet guy who criticized Stalin.
Yep, even wrote a book about it.
And Big Brother, well, that's Stalin, isn't it?
The mustache, the cult of personality, the whole deal.
It's all there.
Even Goldstein turning into a sheep during the 2 minutes hate. That's straight from Soviet propaganda.
Wow.
They used to show Trotsky as an animal.
Dehumanizing him.
Exactly.
And all that focus on production in Oceania, that feels very Soviet style, too.
It is. They're obsessed with meeting these crazy quotas, just like the Soviets with their Stakhanovites.
Right, those workers who supposedly did superhuman amounts of work.
It was all propaganda, of course.
But effective, I guess.
And the torture methods the thought police use, they're not just made up either.
No.
They're straight out of the NKVD playbook.
The Soviet secret police?
Yep. Rubber truncheons, sleep deprivation, exploiting your fears, making you look at yourself all broken down.
It's all there in the book.
Chillingly accurate.
Even those random rocket attacks on Airstrip 1, those came from real life.
They did. The
Ah.
V1 and V2 attacks on London during the war. Orwell lived through that.
Scary stuff. What about the thought police? Was that a pure Orwell invention?
Well, inspired by the NKVD again, they'd arrest people for anything anti-Soviet, even just saying something in private.
So you could get in trouble for your thoughts, not even actions.
Exactly.
That's messed up.
And those forced confessions, like from Rutherford, Aronson, and Jones, those are straight from the show trials.
Oh, right, where they made those old Bolsheviks confess to crimes they didn't commit.
Exactly.
It's all so horrifyingly real, even that Under the Spreading Chestnut Tree song has a deeper meaning.
It does. It's based on an old folk song, but Orwell twisted it.
To represent betrayal, right.
Exactly.
And the 2 minutes hate, the hate week, those are exaggerated, but you can see where he got the idea.
Oh, yeah. From those massive rallies in the Soviet Union, they'd go on for days, demonizing enemies, pumping up the crowd.
It's like a blueprint for how to manipulate people with emotion.
Exactly.
Okay, what about Newspeak, Doublethink, the Ministry of Truth? Those are so central to the book's message.
They are. Orwell took real propaganda techniques from both the Soviets and the British and turned them up to 11.
To show how language can be used to control thought.
Exactly. The Ministry of Truth, that's a direct shot at how they manipulated information, rewrote history.
And Winston's job, literally changing the past.
That and the whole unperson thing, where they erase people from history.
That's so relevant today. With digital information, it can just disappear.
It's scary how much it resonates. The Soviets did that too, you know.
Absolutely.
Airbrushed people out of photos, changed encyclopedia entries. It's like they never existed.
And Big Brother's orders of the day, those weren't made up either.
Nope, those are based on Stalin's wartime orders. Same name and everything.
Wow.
And that slogan, our new happy life, that's ripped straight from Soviet propaganda too.
It's almost funny how blatant it is.
It's darkly ironic.
Okay, beyond the Soviet stuff, what other books or ideas influenced 1984?
Oh, a bunch. We talked about We and Brave New World, but there's also Koestler's Darkness at Noon, a powerful anti-totalitarian novel, and his essay collection, The Yogi and the Commissar. Then there's Jack London's The Iron Heel, a super bleak dystopian story.
Makes sense.
And this obscure book, 1920, dips into the near future, which actually predicted a lot of what Orwell wrote about.
Wow.
And James Burnham's The Managerial Revolution, which talked about these warring superstates.
Huh.
Orwell even wanted to write in a style similar to H.G. Wells, but obviously with a much darker message.
So he was drawing on a lot of sources.
He was.
And the Cold War, all that anxiety and tension, that fed into the book too, right?
Absolutely. Those shifting alliances, the fear of surveillance, it's all there. The Ministry of Truth, that's based on the BBC's propaganda machine during the war.
Right.
Even Room 101 was inspired by a real room at the BBC.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole look of the Ministry of Truth.
Yeah.
That's based on Senate House, where the Ministry of Information was, the post-war setting, the Soviet Union becoming the enemy. It all reflects what was happening in the world.
And the idea of English socialism being twisted into ingsoc, that comes from Orwell's own beliefs.
It does. During the war, he thought Britain needed a socialist revolution. But 1984 shows his fear that those ideals could be corrupted.
Turning into Big Brother's nightmare.
Exactly.
So, with such a bleak and powerful book, what did the critics think?
When it came out in '49, it got a lot of praise. V.S. Pritchett called it terrifying and depressing, but also original and urgent.
Makes sense.
Others called it the most impressive political novel since The Aerodrome.
Wow.
Big names like Bertrand Russell and E.M. Forster loved it too.
So a pretty positive reception overall.
Mostly. But not everyone was on board.
Of course not.
Some thought it was too gloomy, too pessimistic.
Right.
C.S. Lewis, he thought the love story was weak.
Interesting.
And then there were the Marxist critics.
Like Isaac Deutscher.
Yep, he called Orwell naive, said he didn't understand Marxism, thought the book was just anti-communist propaganda.
And American critics, they had their own take, didn't they?
They did. Some saw it as an attack on British socialism. Others thought it was all about Stalin.
Interesting. So it was interpreted in different ways depending on the political context.
Exactly. Orwell even had to clarify what he meant. He said he was satirizing how centralized economies can go wrong, whether it's communism or fascism.
Not just attacking socialism itself.
Right.
And of course, 1984 has been banned and challenged over the years.
Like a lot of dystopian novels that make people uncomfortable.
Brave New World, Fahrenheit 451, they've all been there.
It's a badge of honor almost.
But despite the controversy, its influence is huge. The BBC even called it one of the most influential novels ever.
They did in 2019.
And its impact wasn't limited to the West. It really resonated in Eastern Europe, behind the Iron Curtain.
It did. Czeso Miłosz, a Polish writer, said that even though it was banned, people knew about it.
Wow.
And it felt eerily familiar to them.
Chilling.
Christopher Hitchens talked about the irony of a book about a secret book becoming a secret book in those countries.
That's wild. And the number of translations is pretty telling, too.
By 1989, it was translated into 65 languages.
Wow. More than any other English novel at that point.
Exactly.
It was banned in the Soviet Union until '88, but it circulated underground.
Samizdat editions, they were called.
And get this, the Soviet elite actually had a secret edition in '59.
Shows how much they were worried about it.
Yeah.
In China, it had a weird publication history, too. First, it was restricted, then it became more available.
Strange.
People are still debating why they allow it now.
I guess some books are just too powerful to suppress completely.
I think so.
And the cultural impact of 1984 is massive. So many of its terms have become part of our language.
Big Brother, Room 101, Thought Police, Thought Crime, Unperson, Memory Hole, Doublethink, Newspeak. I mean, the list goes on.
It's like he predicted our vocabulary for talking about surveillance and control.
In Orwellian, that's become shorthand for any kind of dystopia.
Totally.
And the speak suffix, we see that everywhere now.
It's true.
Plus, there's an asteroid named Orwell. Yep, named in 1984, of course.
Fitting. And the pop culture references, I mean, they're everywhere.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
That Big Brother reality show, that's the most obvious one.
Guys, see you in another podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel.